Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
What's needed in Souk is not the same as what's needed in Vancouver, which is different from what's needed in Valemount.
BC's premier on the defense says he forces school boards to mandate vaccines or not. Also, the global energy crisis brings warnings for British Columbians at the pump, and why how big your Thanksgiving gathering can be depends on where you live in BC.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A woman from the West Kootenays is warning others tonight. She stayed home for much of the pandemic and because of that, avoided a trip to the doctor's office. Now, along with many other Canadians, she's facing a much steeper medical recovery after a serious case of melanoma. Vicodopia tells us the pandemic has led to a spike in serious cases of skin cancer. And a warning, this report includes some distressing medical imagery.
Fran Ure has stayed home as much as possible during the pandemic, even putting off getting a mole growing on her leg looked at.
I delayed and delayed and delayed until after months of my partner pestering me.
By then, it needed major surgery urgently. It was a melanoma, the most potentially severe skin cancer.
The melanoma had gotten to the stage of invasion, invaded other tissues.
You have a very rare kind of melanoma.
Specialists say they're seeing skin cancers in a more advanced state more frequently.
Carcinomas on their face, a whole face. We've seen metastatic cancers on the back, melanomas that are huge, things that we never see in our country.
He's treating more cases like this one. The surgery is deep and devastating.
We felt so terrible for the patients, and frequently the surgeries are much, much more extensive, and mortality has been really shocking, to be honest.
There are no national numbers on the impact of the pandemic on skin cancers, but data from Ontario are revealing. During the first wave, there were 15% fewer referrals for biopsies of all skin cancers compared to the same period the previous year. For melanomas, it was a 27% decrease, which is higher than the 21% global estimate.
They're seeing almost entirely extremely difficult cases.
The wait list for this specialist and his team has shrunk dramatically, and he worries why there are fewer patients.
Their reluctance to seek care maybe, or the doctor's inability or reluctance to see patients in person.
The cancer that started as a mole on her leg spread to a lymph node. A surgeon removed most of it. That now means, along with her meditation, a new vigilance. Vicodopia, CBC News, Toronto.
BC's premier is defending the decision not to have the province mandate vaccines for school staff. Instead, his government is leaving it up to each individual school board. The CBC's Dan Barrarda is live with us tonight on this. And Dan, we're hearing from some of those school boards about having to make this decision. So what are they saying?
Wait and see, Anita. With no provincial order for teachers and other staff, districts are waiting for more guidance on what they are allowed to do. We contacted several school districts today. Newestminster says it's seeking legal advice on mandatory staff vaccinations. Abbotsford says it's been told the Education Ministry has set up a committee to develop some guidelines to help school boards, and it will wait to hear those. The largest district in BC, Surrey, says it will have more to say after a provincial call tomorrow. But the chair of the board of Mission Public Schools wonders why they're being asked to make medical decisions, especially when she says vaccination rates in her community are low.
Boards are well equipped to make decisions regarding, student achievement and what's best for their individual communities. But I'm not. Should trustees be making medical health decisions on behalf of others?
When asked about her concerns, Premier Horgan says school boards can get medical advice from Dr. Bonnie Henry with a simple phone call. He also stresses teachers are not provincial employees.
There is a responsibility for elected representatives who put their hand up and said, I'd like to be on the school board, to inform themselves about the best way to protect their employees and the children within their district. And I don't mean to be accusatory here, but there's no shortage of information. We know without any doubt that the vaccines available today are safe, they're effective.
So we will wait to see what that provincial committee says. When it comes to vaccines for kids aged 5 to 11, though, who can't get vaccinated, at least yet, Horgan says his government will move immediately to administer shots once they're available, possibly in schools. We know Pfizer has submitted early data to Health Canada for a COVID vaccine for children. Anita.
All right, Dan, thanks for that update. BC Hydro will soon require proof of COVID-19 vaccination from all employees and contractors. More than 6,000 Hydro employees around BC will have to have 2 shots by November 22nd. That includes workers at the Site C dam. A deadline of January 10th has been set for contract workers. Meantime, a fix on our story from yesterday. Some or all of BC Ferry's 5,100 employees will have to be vaccinated. The company says the federal mandate will, in fact, apply to them. And with another pandemic Thanksgiving days away, safety is sure to be top of mind for many families across the province. And as Anita Bathe reports, the rules on how you can celebrate look pretty different depending on where you live.
From 4,000 turkeys to cranberries and pumpkins, Richmond farmer Derek Edwards has been gearing up for Thanksgiving.
We always have like a big turkey dinner. So we get as much family that's around in, and we cook the biggest one that we can find and sit around and enjoy it.
But even for this family of turkey connoisseurs, this year's dinner looks different.
We're still kind of with immediate family, but this year, yeah, we're just keeping it small.
They think others will have fewer seats at the table too. So less demand means they've been producing fewer birds throughout this pandemic.
People weren't buying bigger birds to have a big family dinner because you just couldn't have them.
But this year, the size of gatherings depends on where you live. In Northern Health and Interior Health, it's 1 household plus 5 visitors, regardless of vaccination status. In the Eastern Fraser Valley, Mission, Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and Agassiz-Harrison, if everyone attending is vaccinated, there are no restrictions. For the rest of BC, there are no rules, but the advice is ask your guests some important questions.
Number 1, if they're fully vaccinated. Number 2, if they have symptoms. And number 3, if they've had any high-risk contacts.
And if the weather allows, take the feast outside to reduce your risk.
I think it's important to have these conversations ahead of time rather than having them on your doorstep when people actually show up for the Thanksgiving dinner.
Something the Edwards will be doing to keep their own family safe. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's daily COVID-19 cases are trending lower overall by more than 100 today to 624. 4 more people have died from the virus. Hospitalizations continue to climb, now at 373 people, with 132 in intensive care. 92 of those in hospital are from the Northern Health region. That's almost 1 in every 4 patients. Today, the University Hospital of Northern BC introduced stricter health protocols as it continues to deal with COVID-19 outbreaks in 2 inpatient units. Well, the latest COVID-19 modeling report shows a steep growth in positive cases among unvaccinated children.
But this year is different because this year we have vaccination in the older groups. We have, of course, children unvaccinated, and we also have a Delta, which is much more highly transmissible than the variants that we had last year. So this year might not look like last year in schools and kids and in the broader community because things are very different.
The data shows a spike mid-September when kids started heading back to school. This is also in line with looser restrictions as vaccinations increased among those eligible. But children account for nearly 50% of unvaccinated people in BC. Particularly affected are school-aged kids in Fraser Health, Interior Health, and Island Health. As restaurants return to full capacity and fewer COVID-19 restrictions, owners of live music venues say they're frustrated. As Janella Hamilton reports, they say they're being hit with more rules than others.
Emotionally, it's been extremely tiring.
Mo Tar Mohammed is the owner of the Rickshaw Theatre on Hastings Street in Vancouver. He says after 18 months of virtual shows and empty seats, he was looking forward to returning to full capacity.
We started booking shows in September, October, November based on the province's roadmap to recovery plan in June, where they had suggested that by September We'd have full capacity shows.
As fall approached and vaccination rates increased, restrictions for restaurants eased, but those changes did not apply to music venues.
Everyone had to be masked, unless they were drinking, of course. They couldn't stand, they couldn't dance.
Tar Mohammed says since the beginning of the pandemic, this past month has been the most stressful.
I've had 5 sold-out shows that I've had to cancel, and it's cost me tens of thousands of dollars.
Tar Mohammed says the rickshaw has a 500-person capacity. He says operating at 50% is not economically viable.
There's this misconception that, venues like ours are just like a nightclub and people are getting drunk and dancing and not obeying, the safety protocols, which is further from the truth.
Kevin Marr is the lead singer for Vancouver band Fake Shark. He says music venues like the Rickshaw rely on live shows to make money.
I really feel for the venues and the venue owners because I feel like it's unfair on them. You can have, you're not allowed to have a full capacity room if you're putting on a concert with people performing music. But if you filled the same room with salads in front of everyone, that's fine.
In a statement to CBC News, the Ministry of Health says the purpose behind the BC vaccine card has always been to consider easing restrictions for gatherings and events where all participants are fully vaccinated.
We can do shows here safely at full capacity. Just give us that opportunity to do that.
Tar Mohammed says the rickshaw will continue to sell upcoming shows at 50% capacity, but hopes rules for live music venues changes on October 24th when proof of full vaccination is required. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a warning tonight about public safety as Vancouver police search for a suspect in a disturbing attack that happened Tuesday afternoon. A 22-year-old woman was assaulted while waiting for a bus on Knight Street and East 57th Avenue.
The man was behaving oddly. He first approached, there was a brief conversation. He showed her a condom, he showed her a pornographic image on his phone, and he propositioned her for sex. She refused, she walked away, and as she was walking away, she was kicked from behind by the suspect and knocked to the ground.
The woman was able to get up and run away from the suspect, who also fled. He's described as an Asian man in his 20s with a small build and short, dark hair. He was wearing a red ski jacket, a white hoodie, red pleather pants, and Air Force One basketball shoes. He was also carrying a black and red camouflage backpack. Police have named the victim from Tuesday night's fatal shooting in Surrey as 28-year-old Sharnbir Somel. He was from Surrey and known to police. Investigators say the shooting was targeted and is connected to the Lower Mainland gang conflict. RCMP responded to gunshots Tuesday night near 122nd Street and 80th Avenue. There, officers found Somel suffering from fatal injuries. Shortly after, a black Ford pickup was found ablaze near 129A Street and 72A Avenue, and that fire is believed to be connected to the shooting. RCMP are asking anyone with dashcam video from either area to contact investigators. Vancouver City Council has scrapped a proposed parking plan intended to address climate change concerns. The mayor cast the deciding vote opposing the plan to the dismay of Green councillors.
I implore you to reconsider your vote on this and pass this plan because it is taking action that will concretely reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
What this means is taking more money out of the pockets of our residents, pure and simple. And every time I hear new revenue streams, I cringe.
The plan would have created an annual pollution charge for new vehicles, ranging from $500 for sedans and smaller SUVs considered moderate polluters, and up to $1,000 for bigger gas guzzlers. It also proposed an overnight street parking fee for residents and visitors. The motion was defeated 6-5. The Kamloops Tashkwetmik First Nation says it isn't interested in another apology from the federal government, but it is once again inviting the Prime Minister to Kamloops to meet with residential school survivors. This time, Justin Trudeau has accepted. A private visit is planned for later this month. According to The Nation, Trudeau ignored 2 previous invitations to join them for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Instead, he went to Tofino with his family. They call his actions a missed opportunity and say his attendance would have been an acknowledgement that would have brought peace to many. Now, they are asking Ottawa to fund a new healing centre to help those reeling from the added grief of unmarked graves at the former Kamloops residential school. Well, it's been 99 days since a wildfire ravaged the village of Llynton, and the BC Liberal MLA who represents the riding is accusing the government of failing to help residents rebuild.
99 days, 4 letters to the government, endless emails, endless requests, and the people of Llynton have no idea what you're doing in their community.
We are doing our level best to bring together the right people to make sure we can get people back into the community as quickly as possible.
If you're doing your level best, my God, we're in trouble.
Jackie Taggart is demanding a detailed timeline for when the people of Llynton can expect interim housing. The province says, among other things, it's working with the federal government and the Red Cross to make sure promised supports are in place. Well, there's been another delay in the criminal case against a former soccer coach for both the women's national team and the Whitecaps. Bob Barrarda was expected in court today on sex-related charges, but won't appear until the end of the month. Barrarda faces 9 charges, including sexual exploitation, sexual assault, and child luring. The alleged offenses occurred over a 20-year period starting in 1988, all in Metro Vancouver. The 4 complainants cannot be named, but CBC has learned at least 3 are former soccer players. None of the allegations against Barrarda have been proven in court, and he has yet to enter a plea and is out on bail. An expert says delays are not uncommon in cases involving alleged historic crimes. We'll take a look at this. A beluga whale spotted in Puget Sound today. The wayward whale has been seen 3 times this week swimming off the Washington coast. This is the first time a beluga has been known to visit these waters since 1940. Normally, they're found much closer to Alaska. While it's rare for one to stray so far, last summer a beluga did make it all the way to San Diego. Scientists are monitoring the cetacean's health and hope the wandering whale finds its way home. Amazing stuff. We are having a whale of a year, that's for sure. They're just whales all the time.
It's true, yeah. And now, for better or for worse, I think for better, I definitely have Baby Beluga playing nonstop in my head. So yeah, I'll be following that closely. Probably cetaceans and humans alike wondering what the long weekend forecast is bringing, and the confidence is growing in what the forecast holds. If you like today, you're going to love tomorrow, and you're probably going to like Sunday and Monday too, just to lay it out ahead of time. Let me start you off with the current temperatures out there. 11 for YVR. We are going to remain chilly this long weekend. Seasonals for this time of the year, based on our last 20-30 year average anyway, about 15 degrees. So we are below right through to early next week. That's sort of been our trend for the past couple of weeks as well. Want to take you to the satellite and radar because tonight we are looking at clouds to encroach. You can just see them tracking down the Sunshine Coast. That's in advance of a system that's bringing some rain to the island tonight, but it's really going to dissipate as it sort of hits the dry air and the high pressure system in place across the lower mainland. Watch this. The model showing the rain tracking down across the island. Here's 2, 3, 4 a.m. Just pausing you at 6 a.m. Look how close that rain gets to Metro Vancouver. You might even see some drops in through Victoria. So far, the model's holding that rain off before high pressure winds out and we get the sunshine tomorrow. But I'm saying there's a chance of a few spits and spots. I'm not ruling that out. I'll get you the long weekend coming up.
As long as it's just spits and spots, I think we can handle it.
I think so too.
Thanks, Jo.
You're welcome.
Well, the BC Sports Hall of Fame has announced its 2021 class. And here at the CBC, we are very proud to say one of our own is included. Karen Larson is being inducted into the media category. A highly regarded reporter, Karen is a sports specialist who's covered several Olympic Games and is herself an Olympian. She represented Canada at the 1988 Games in synchronized swimming and is also a world champion in the sport. Congratulations, Karen. And you are watching CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm your host, Anita Bathe. Always trying to remind you, if you can't get to a TV, you can always find our program on our free app. It's called CBC Gem. A shocking announcement from the Montreal Canadiens, their star goalie taking a leave of absence. Why their coach was in tears next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Flags are flying at half-mast at Concordia University in honor of Nadia Chokri, the neuroscientist who inspired many with her very public diagnosis of ovarian cancer. We learned yesterday she's passed away. As Jay Turnbull shows us, Chokri used her final months raising money to help the next generation of scientists from diverse backgrounds.
The last few months of Nadia Chokri's life were not easy. Her final weeks spent in hospital in palliative care. But the courage with which she faced those final days moved thousands. The Concordia professor invited people, complete strangers, to follow her journey through social media. The grind of treatment, the joy of her family, her son and her moon, Reza and Moni. In most posts, Chokri was beaming, despite sometimes not being able to walk.
I'm very optimistic about the future, even though my prognosis is not great.
Her candid tweets gained international attention. Nearly 150,000 people now follow her account. But now, her journey is over. Her last tweet was September 28th. But her legacy will live on for generations. She created the Nadia Chokri Wingspan Award at Concordia. The scholarship will support neuroscientists from underrepresented backgrounds, such as those facing barriers because of their race or gender. Those who knew her personally speak of her grace.
I feel a sense of just tremendous admiration. This is just like another example of her being fearless and courageous and impressive.
She just loves, I think, sharing her soul with everyone. And I think that's one way that she loves to express it. She kind of encompasses, I think, a lot of aspects of what I think most of us want to be. She has all these amazing interests and skills outside of being a good person and being a good scientist.
Chokri raised awareness about her fundraisers right up till the end. And she also raised awareness about ovarian cancer and how women can try to get diagnosed sooner. Nadia Chokri was 43. Jay Turnbull, CBC News, Montreal.
The Montreal Canadiens will start the regular season next week without their star goalie, who also happens to be from BC. Carrie Price is one of the biggest names in the NHL, and he's voluntarily entering a player assistance program. As Alison Northcott reports, it's a resource for players seeking help with issues such as mental health and substance abuse.
Carrie Price is a star player on the Montreal Canadiens, but the team will have to begin its regular season without him as he enters into the league's player assistance program. The team's general manager, Marc Bergevin, did not go into detail about the reasons Price is going into the program, but said it did catch him off guard, but that he salutes his players' decision.
Carrie and his family, he's got kids, 3 kids and his wife, so I think we need to support them. We need to respect their privacy. and wish him the best.
Price's wife, Angela Price, shared a post on Instagram alluding to her husband's mental health, saying it's important to put mental health first. She said, asking for help and letting yourself be supported by others is not just okay, but encouraged anytime, under any circumstance. The team's head coach, Dominique Ducharme, says the whole team is behind Price.
We have a family that is knit pretty tight, and they care about each other. Their well-being and the way the guys play. They don't care who scores. They don't care who gets the star. And they care about how guys are, having success and playing and so on, but also how they're doing outside of the rink.
Price is expected to be away for at least 30 days, but the general manager says it could be longer. Still, Marc Bergevin says with the help Price is getting, he expects he will be back and be the same goalie he was. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
An update now on a CBC News story about the Royal Canadian Mint and allegations of racism and sexism in the workplace by a former staff member. CBC News has now obtained the scathing report that came out of the independent investigation. As Olivia Stefanovic tells us, it found women and people of color most affected.
The report concludes that a toxic work environment remains in place in parts of the Royal Canadian Mint. The investigation was commissioned by the Crown Corporation after former employee Joelle Hainzelin came forward with her story to the Mint's president, detailing racism and sexual harassment on the job as a protective services officer.
I'm happy it came out. I'm happy it's coming out in public. And I'm sorry that we needed to resort to an investigation to actually have kind of proof that is real.
The external review only looks at the workplace culture of the Mint's protective security services. Hainzelin says she's heard from other employees in other departments who say they've also experienced discrimination and bullying. Matthew McAdam is one of them. He used to work on the production floor, processing gold and silver. McAdam says he was bullied so badly that he had a nervous breakdown in the fall of 2019 and hasn't been able to return to work since.
There needs to be an inquiry by union or other higher up parts of the government to look in on the Mint, all departments, and try and understand, because I'm not the only one that's come forward.
McAdam's union, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, is backing his request, calling for a full investigation into the Mint. Instead, President and CEO Marie Lemay sent an email to CBC News saying that the Crown Corporation will adopt all 24 recommendations from the report, and she says the Mint has already taken action by dedicating a staff member to support diversity in the recruitment process of protective services and also implementing cultural bias training for all new hires. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, drivers are feeling the pain of much higher prices at the pumps, nearing record highs in parts of the country. Vancouver has the distinction of posting the highest gas price nationwide, $1.61 per litre right now. That's 20 cents more than the Canadian average. Peter Armstrong looks at what's behind the costs.
If you're looking for nuance over the rising price of gasoline, these pumps in St. John's are probably not the best place to start.
They're not spot. It's going to be $1.60, and I'm pretty sure that's a record in that province. And I don't know, for young people, it's nuts.
Gas price, it's crazy. It's not good for delivery drivers.
Frustrating though it is, this is evidence of an economy bouncing back, that people are driving and flying again. When the price of oil hits these levels, producers usually pump more, and that brings down the price. Not now, not after the dismal year producers just had.
The investor community has essentially been saying, don't you dare invest another dollar into production, sit back, enjoy the wildly high prices while you have them, and finally give us some of our money back.
Canada's surge in oil and gas may leave consumers upset, but it doesn't hold a candle to the unfolding energy crisis in Europe and Asia. In China, coal production fell last year and hasn't caught up. As much as 44% of China's industrial activity's already been hit by power shortages. This one makes do with a generator for now. If this goes on much longer, he says, we won't survive. Beijing has ordered energy companies to secure supplies for this winter at all costs. Meanwhile, in Europe, power bills have tripled in some regions this year as natural gas prices have hit record levels. This man says the poor are getting hit the hardest. No one puts on the heating, he says, because everyone knows they won't be able to pay for it. There's no simple fix, and winter is coming. Whether it's coal in China, gas in Europe, or oil in North America, this last year has wreaked havoc on supply. Now, as demand turns, the havoc is shifting to prices with very real impacts at every turn. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Lawyers are dealing with a dynamic and prickly new issue: vaccine mandates in the workplace. What employers are allowed to do and what rights workers can protect. We find out next.
It sounds a little crazy. Every year about this time, grown men and women don wetsuits, flippers, and snorkels and plunge into the swirling rivers of British Columbia. It's sort of inland body surfing. Fans of it are looking for thrills, yes, but they're also looking for salmon. The CBC's Bob Nixon took the plunge with them.
You can see down there where there's quite a few rapids. The water gets fairly shallow and it gets quite bumpy.
Heidi Lander is talking about tackling the Campbell River, a challenge for a kayak, downright dangerous in a canoe. But there's no kayak here, no canoe. Lander and her group are going down the Campbell in wetsuits.
This is tight.
Sound crazy? Maybe it is, but a few folks in Campbell River have been doing it for years. Lander will take groups of people who stay at her April Point Lodge on nearby Quadra Island.
When you get out of here, your eyes will be about this big.
It all started about 10 years ago when some Department of Fisheries people floated down the Campbell in an effort to count the number of spawning salmon. Today, salmon swimming is a growing autumn pastime.
And the real wonder of it for me is that every time you swim the river, you see something different. If you're 6 feet over from where you were last time, or if the river is a little higher or a little lower, the whole world under there is altered.
They get in downstream from where the salmon actually spawn. The water depth is from 1 to 15 feet. The idea is simply to float and not disturb the fish. Once you're in, the idea is simply to stay alive.
I especially love going through the rapids. That was something that was just so exhilarating. I can't believe that.
You don't see as many fish, though, in the rapids.
No, I was too busy watching for the rocks.
If it's the first time to put a suit on, it's the first time with a snorkel in your mouth, you're in this river that's flowing the way it's going, you can't really fight it. There's a lot of components that can kind of combine to work against you. If you panic easily, or if you tend to get short of breath or feel claustrophobic, then it can be a problem, and it's not something you should consider, lightly.
The salmon swimming season is just about over for this year. Soon, the fall rains will muddy the waters and the spawning fish will die. But just like the Chinook and coho, there will be people who return to the river next year.
Our thanks to Bob Nixon for that story. And that's our program for tonight. Later on The National with Peter Mansbridge, a report from British Columbia on the frantic last days of the provincial election campaign.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The Kamloops Tashwetmik Nation in Kamloops says it's not interested in further apologies from the federal government. This comes after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ignored the community's invitations to visit on the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation last week. The community has instead called on Ottawa to commit to funding a healing center to support residential school survivors and their families. Well, as you get ready for your Thanksgiving plans, how many people can gather depends on where you live in BC. In the interior and in the north, you can only have 5 more people added to your household, regardless of vaccination status. In Fraser East, as long as everyone is vaccinated, you can have a gathering with as many people as you want. And for the rest of the province, no rules apply.
I delayed and delayed and delayed until after months of my partner pestering me.
A Nakusp woman sheltering in place during the pandemic avoided a trip to the doctor's office. Now, along with many other Canadians, she's facing a much steeper medical recovery after a serious case of melanoma. Statistics suggest all this has led to a spike in serious, possibly fatal cases of skin cancer. Vaccine mandates are coming or are already in place for lots of different workplaces. We've seen rules in healthcare, with private companies, and for public sector workers. And we're already hearing stories of people being let go for refusing to get the COVID shot. We're joined now by Maggie Campbell, a labor and employment lawyer here in Vancouver. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Anita. My pleasure.
Maggie, we've sort of anticipated that the workforce would be going this way. How has your firm been prepping for it, knowing that many companies could face lawsuits for firing people who don't get the vaccine?
Yeah, it's interesting. This has been a really dynamic area of law. My firm, Roper Grail, we've been working with employers for several months now, talking to them about vaccine mandates and what they can and can't do. So it's been an issue that's really been on the forefront of our practices. We've seen an incredible shift in the law in the last few weeks even. So it's something that we've been ready for and working with clients on already.
And what are those clients telling you now? Are they worried? What sort of decisions are they making?
So many employers are looking to put in a vaccine policy in their workplace, and there's a variety of different kinds of policies that they can implement. But broadly speaking, a lot of employers are looking to find out if their workforce is vaccinated. So they're asking employees to disclose their vaccination status and provide proof of vaccination status so that they can plan for occupational health and safety in their workplace. Employers are also, some of them, asking employees to be vaccinated to come on site to work in their office or a workplace, or to go off site and work with clients and that kind of thing. So broadly speaking, those are the sort of 2 things that are happening. I think everyone is a little nervous because this is so new and we haven't had to do anything like this in the past. But employers are feeling increasingly confident, I think, implementing those measures, especially given that we're seeing broad vaccine mandates, especially in the public sector, federally, down south, and increasingly in the private sector.
And what are you telling, or what would you say to workers, I guess, who don't have the COVID shot and are thinking about bringing forward a lawsuit? Do they have any legs to stand on here?
You know, for the most part, I mean, I represent employers, and I think for the most part, if a vaccine policy or a mandate is implemented in a way that's reasonable and reasonable in scope, there is very little an employee can do if they don't agree with it. Employees have obviously the right to seek accommodation if they have a medical ground for not being vaccinated, or potentially a religious belief or a political belief that's interfering with their ability to get vaccinated. But for the most part, if an employer's policy is reasonable in scope, employees are going to need to follow it.
And what about human rights complaints? Do you think that we'll see some of those?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we will see many of those likely. We've seen a lot of masking complaints being filed at the tribunal. That's been a huge issue over the last year, and I expect anti-vaccination complaints or people resisting vaccine mandates in the workplace to form the basis of human rights complaints as well. Now, the Human Rights Code only protects people with protected characteristics. So you have to have either a medical issue that's preventing you from being vaccinated. That's a really small group of people. Vast majority of people are going to either be able to take the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine or the AstraZeneca vaccine. And then probably even a smaller group of the public who has a religious or political belief that's interfering with their ability to get vaccinated. So generally speaking, just not wanting to get a vaccine or not agreeing with your employer's policy isn't going to be enough to have protection under the Human Rights Code.
All right, well, we'll be watching this all very closely, and I'm sure we'll check in with you in the months to come. Maggie Campbell is a labor lawyer here in Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a remote road that winds its way through a land impacted by permafrost. But as the world warms, a new system to deal with climate change. Next. At 6:38, you are looking at a live shot of Sasquatch Mountain where snow is dusting the mountaintops. A fall-like forecast for the long weekend, perfect baking weather. So fire up that oven. Joe has all the details next.
Colonization. We need to talk. I know you well. I wish I didn't, but I do. How crazy is this? There is a road named after you in my hometown. The road starts at the base of our traditional ceremonial grounds on my reserve, Couchiching First Nation in northwestern Ontario. I played on this road. I swam off of it, I drove and walked this road, but I never knew what this road had done to my people. And it turns out there are colonization roads scattered across Manitoba and Ontario. Crazy. In the early 1900s, after the Métis resistance, my mom's family relocated from Fort Alexander to Couchiching. In 1914, my dad's family was forcibly relocated from one of the 7 Anishinaabe communities along the Rainy River to form Manitou Rapids First Nation. This was an illegal amalgamation by the province of Ontario because they wanted the land for settlers and they gave them our land for free. What are we talking about when we talk about the settlement of Canada? By order of Parliament, land grants are to be given for the purpose of settlement in Somerville Township by order of the Public Lands Act. Yeah, how many of these would be printed? Like, could be 100?
It could be quite more than that, actually.
Right.
Typically for orders like this, 1 or 2% actually draw immigrants who buy into this program. And so they have to produce quite broadly, and they're going to disseminate these all over the place, town, country, city.
Right.
What was presented to them was the best case scenario. So what you're looking at is an offer of irrigated land, lots of nearby lumber, lots of potential farmland, access to trade markets, roads, things like that. So they're not told about the winters. They're not told about the lack of access to water for 8 months of the year because everything's frozen. So those little details get left out.
Life would have been very difficult to come over here and to discover things like winter and the land being very different as well.
Well, the advantage of this piece of policy in 1853 is that you're actually given land on a documented surveyed road. So there is a road there, which makes things immeasurably easier than happened to be the circumstance 20 years earlier, when you're given a parcel of land literally in the middle of nowhere.
So the government decided if we create a road system, then they will give the access to the land and we would be able to have a greater population.
To me, roads, railways, they're like an infection, not just metaphorically, but actually. It was a way of invading our territories without legal authority, without consent. And what are roads used for now? They literally bleed our territories dry of people, of resources, everything that matters to us, and they pose a hazard.
Drivers using the major highway connecting Yukon and Alaska will have to watch out for a new alert system. The warnings are for thawing permafrost and the risk of damage to the road. Anna Bathe tells us more about the problem and the innovative solution.
The crack has formed here, and you can even measure the movement from the base of the trees.
The thick layer of ice under much of Yukon's soil is melting, causing cracks in the ground like this one. At kilometer 1456 on the Alaska Highway, just half an hour from downtown Whitehorse.
The sediment is collapsing, is drained in the river. It's what you can see there. And basically, as long as you have ice to feed this process, the slope will continue to progress and to expand. So it's very concerning to have this type of process developing close to such a road corridor, and therefore we want to develop system to remediate this type of issues and protect the roads from this hazard.
The slump is 40 meters away from the shoulder of the Alaska Highway, one of the only roads connecting Yukon and Alaska to the rest of North America. At this rate, it could start threatening the road and drivers using it in the next 3 years. Researchers say that could have a real impact on people's lives here.
Some people live on the other side of this road, so if it goes down the drain, some people don't have access to their homes and to Whitehorse, to the hospital, and that sort of thing.
Slumps like this one along the Alaska Highway are developing all over Canada's north. This particular site is melting quickly. It lost 5 meters of ground in just 1 month. One casualty of extremely high summer temperatures brought on by the heat dome over the Pacific Northwest.
It's not very impressive, but it has a very little footprint, so it's not disturbing for the ground.
Little rods like this one are the backbone of the alert system. They measure the humidity and temperature of the ground, both key indicators of permafrost health. The information is sent to a computer that sends out alerts to drivers if they face a threat from this slump or extreme weather events.
This is the first one. It is a test site, but there is other systems that are installed now in 2 or 3 communities in Nunavik along airports.
Now, the alarm system is said to be finished before the end of the year. And when it is finished, researchers are hoping that alerts will help highways and public works figure out when there is a threat to this iconic road and help them save it. Anna Demara, CBC News, at kilometer 1456 of the Alaska Highway.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is back with us, and you're back inside where it's warm. But I want to talk about this perfect baking weather this weekend. Will you be taking part?
I'll be doing so. I'm going to attempt a pecan pie on Saturday. That's the baking day. How about you?
I am going to do the same, I think. I'm looking at a lot
pecan
of recipes.
Pie?
Yeah. I've never made one before, so let's see. We'll have to compare notes on Monday.
Neither have I. Anita, it is on. The great CBC Pecan Pie Bake-Off starts this Saturday. You gotta want to stay tuned. And yes, Saturday is the perfect baking day because that is our rain day this long weekend. Let me start off with a look at the temperatures across the country, though. For everyone checking in on their friends and family coast to coast in a Zoom meeting perhaps this long weekend. Feeling the heat in through northern and southern Ontario. 17 right now in through Toronto this evening, 20 for Winnipeg. And I just want to hone in on the southern prairies where we have an air quality statement in place. Everyone in yellow because of a wildfire still burning in southeastern Saskatchewan. And that is leading to some very poor visibility and air quality, which will continue right through the weekend. That fire has been going since the middle of July. Speaking of heat dome, temperatures continue to fuel that unprecedented late season fire. All right, back on the West Coast and the opposite kind of weather. Look at all that blue, that snow for the Northwest falling in the next 24 hours. We'll see some snow trickle down through the Prince George region. Terrace, you might be picking up a few centimeters. And Prince Rupert, you're definitely going to be getting into the rain of that. But as we mentioned, just flirting with a few showers early tomorrow morning before clearing right back out. It's a gorgeous looking Friday for the South Coast. There's that system that we cannot escape. Saturday, rainy, windy, and cool with the latest Pacific low. Tomorrow looking lovely across the interior, though. Chilly, we're below seasonal for almost everyone. And temperatures tomorrow morning will be hitting the freezing mark for places like Kelowna and Cranbrook. I know talking to our colleagues out of CBC Kelowna, they had the gloves on for the morning bike ride. So one of our coolest mornings yet to come. Look at these temperatures for the interior, staying below seasonal right through the weekend and even dipping down through Sunday and Monday. Kelowna just 10s and 11s in the forecast and 8s out towards the Kootenays. That's the kind of weather we're seeing on the South Coast as well. So 13 tomorrow, dropping down to 11 for our bake-off, and then lingering showers Sunday morning before we get back into the sunshine. But Monday is looking lovely. So that is some kind of perfect forecast, Anita, I would say.
I think it's looking pretty good. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at a former residential school in Kamloops sparked a national reckoning. As Ganhasio Deer reports, it inspired one artist near Montreal to pay tribute to the children who never made it back home and keep the country working towards reconciliation.
I always say that beading is medicine, and making things with your hands and completing a project, it's really therapeutic.
These moccasins are honoring children who never returned home from residential schools. It's called the 215 Plus Project. The goal was to help beaders work through the grief of the discovery of unmarked graves at former residential school sites.
The act of putting your needle to thread and, you know, taking your frustrations out or seeing something through, and it just kind of took the weight off. Usually when our people pass on, you know, they wear their regalia, they wear their moccasins, and it was just, you know, they didn't have that, so it was like beading for them in a way.
The moccasins were brought into Kahnawake classrooms as a way to introduce the legacy of residential schools through art and cultural practices.
It was really important to bring this project into Kahnawake schools because we haven't really talked about residential schools. It's only come about in the past few years that we've brought residential school history into our schools.
If you look across at all of them, every single one is unique. And it just shows that, you know, those traditions were really passed down. We even received a pair that were made of corn husks. And I think that that's amazing to see that was able to kind of come through after everything we've been through.
I did it because my great uncle, Ernest Nicholas, had gone to residential schools. He never returned. The moccasins were an honor for him. And it's just, I thought it was really good project because right now people are looking at this number that's like 215 children and they just see a number. But then when they see the moccasins, it's really impactful to see how many children those were, like who would have been wearing those moccasins. I did a big heart on the moccasin because I really wanted to represent like love, because these kids had a really like hard ending to their life at such a young age, and they really probably didn't feel any love in that school. We're all listening now, and I hope that they're going home now and their spirit is healing.
The moccasins will be brought to more schools around the Montreal area later this month as a way to spread awareness beyond the September 30th National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Ganhasio Deer, CBC News, Kahnawake.
They're known for their street smarts, but one dog in Istanbul is heads and tails above most. Meet Boji, the commuting mutt, next.
So we're currently just putting the finishing touches on the Sacred Spirits of Turtle Island mural art project. I've started this probably about 4 or 5 years ago along my journey. What I realized is I had to go into Winnipeg to access a lot of the services. Selkirk didn't have anything necessarily. So that's why I feel that it's important to have something right here. I envision people using this place as a place of healing, as a place of education for our non-Indigenous relatives, and to work with the Indigenous people, to educate, to promote, to share space, and to heal together.
I think it's very respectful, it's beautiful, it's honoring. It's in a circle, so it's kind of grounding. It's kind of out in the open. It's beautiful. A lot of work was put into it to honor our women.
My mural here was to develop the 13 moons alongside the guidance of our elders. It was very nice. It was the first time I had developed imagery like that, so coming together with the elders and making it happen for this project was really fulfilling. It's time that people start learning and getting back to their culture, and if this is a safe space for that to happen, then I encourage it.
This takes place because of love, because of that gift that we all have the capacity to experience. And love, I see behind us in the work of those creators of that beautiful tribute to our women and girls and our Two-Spirit relatives.
We need to educate the community at large. We also have to have that sacred space for families to gather.
This is all going to be about awareness for our women. They can learn more about the history and who our women were and how it's affected our families. It's very powerful.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
The time of year when most migratory birds in Canada begin to head south, but millions won't reach their destination because along the way, many unintentionally fly into windows. As Fiona Odlum reports, one man in Saskatchewan is working to change that, one bird at a time.
We're getting a lot of birds coming out of the park, seeing the reflection of the park and colliding with that building.
Jeffrey Gamble is a bird enthusiast. During migration season, he searches downtown Regina for birds that have crashed into windows.
This poor bird collided with a building and subsequently been stepped on.
He's part of the Bird Safe Initiative program with Nature Regina.
In the 3 programs we've run, we found around 80 birds in total and about 20 different species of birds.
Gamble says collecting the birds is critical to not only spreading awareness about the hazards of windows, but also understanding species decline.
It's estimated that 25 million birds a year die in Canada during the migration process. So that's a lot of birds. It's also estimated that in North America, 1 billion birds with a B die from colliding with windows.
Once he locates a dead bird, he then catalogs it on the Citizen Science Initiative Global Collision Bird Mapper. Gamble then packs up the bird and takes it to the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. And the museum's collection is a key factor when it comes to recording the effects of climate change.
You know, they've noticed things like changes in the size of the beak. They've noticed changes in the distribution of some birds. And it gives you that really long-term look at biodiversity, but you also preserve, like you saw in those drawers, a lot of information about the shape and the size of these critters.
Together, Gamble and Fisher are giving those lost birds a purpose by documenting the effects of climate change and raising awareness about bird strikes.
If you can put films or tape on these buildings or branding, anything like that to break up that field, it helps a lot with the birds colliding with them.
Until that happens, high above, he'll continue the work on the ground.
Hopefully, one bird at a time, we can kind of grow this community a bit.
Fiona Odlum, CBC News, Regina.
Always good to save as many birds as we can. Okay, from birds to dogs, he's got places to go and people to see, and what better way than on public transit?
He waits out of the lines, just like the other passengers, and after everyone gets out, he gets in the train, and he has a special place.
Bogey is a regular commuter in Istanbul, taking buses and trains, also ferries, where he's a familiar figure, regularly posing for pictures. A tracker on his collar shows Bogey travels up to 30 kilometers a day. Officials say the street dog seems to have a purpose and knows where he's going. He's got plenty of fans, with several social media accounts documenting his exploits. Thank you for watching CBC Vancouver News tonight. You can always find our show online. Dan Bird is here at 11 o'clock with your next local news. And tonight, we leave you with some gorgeous photos from the northwest corner of British Columbia. These were taken by the CBC's Gordon Levering just outside Llynton, BC.